Hello, everybody. Welcome to Looking Through the Glass. Today is another beautiful day. We have another awesome guest, Yost. And she is a lawyer, a children and parent advocate, along with a book writer, an author, and all kinds of other wonderful things. um, Paula, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi, Sela. Thank you. As you said, I'm an attorney. I'm also a licensed clinical mental health therapist.
That was the other
And
one I forgot.
absolutely, yeah, but none of being a lawyer or a licensed clinical mental health therapist would have adequately provided me with the tools and resources that I needed and that I faced with my children.
Mhm.
I think today we're going to have a really good conversation about IEPs and 504s and how to protect our children in the school system.
I think that is the best conversation, especially since I am personally going through something like that in my own life right now. And I know that I'm not the only one. I know that I'm not the only one with this school district that I'm dealing with and with all the other school districts. So first, can you tell us the difference between an IEP and a 504, Chapter 504? That's the
I
number one
sure
question I want to know.
I sure can, but I think before I do that, I want to start with like a bigger picture, like
Okay,
broad reaching umbrella concept,
okay.
which is the concept of FAPE, free appropriate public education. So, all children in the United States are legally and constitutionally entitled to FAPE, free appropriate public education. So, anytime a parent feels like their child is not getting that, they're not getting their needs met, it's
Hmm.
always good to begin with my child is legally entitled to FAPE, and I need to
Okay,
make sure you're giving them FAPE
okay.
because the school system is going to recognize that buzzword. And so that's usually a good place to start because it shows them that you do understand what you're talking about. You're not coming to the table blind. You know what a FAPE is. So free,
I have been 100% coming to the table blind.
yes, most parents do.
Yes.
So free appropriate public education, FAPE, that's the first step. The next part of this is the difference in an IEP and a 504. So, usually to get an IEP, you have to have some form of diagnosable disability. So, examples of that would be dyslexia, dysgraphia, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, some form of autism, not all forms of autism, but a more significant form of autism, low IQ,
Okay.
people that are also just not developing in the way that we would want them to. Those are
Mhm.
all things that could lead to an IEP. A 504 is something that is more behavior based. So, if we have a child who's acting out in school because they have trauma and there's a behavior issue that's taking place,
Mhm.
and the child can be successful, but we need to have a plan for how we can encourage that success. That's what a 504 does. Because unfortunately, trauma is not in and of itself a diagnosis that leads to some sort of educational plan.
Yeah,
Um,
that's quite funny that they want to put him in a 504 when I literally have a diagnosis for ADHD and he's got both types of ADHD. So
so
why would he?
ADHD actually should qualify you for an IEP. So some of the time, what I see, and so I'm always careful about the way I frame what I'm about to say because
Yes.
I don't want educators listening to this to think that I'm trying to say educators are bad or that educators are a problem. I don't believe that at all. I think
Hmm.
most people who get into public education do so because they genuinely do care about children. I don't know why else you would accept a job that in most states pays that little if you didn't genuinely care. But I think a lot of times it's not so much their decision as it is the administration's decision and the rules that the administration gives to teachers that forces them into positions they're not necessarily happy in or that they don't necessarily think you should be in. But essentially, with an ADHD diagnosis, that should be significant to qualify you for an IEP. So I think if there's an issue between IEPs and 504s, if you have a medical diagnosis, which
Hmm.
ADHD is a medical
I
diagnosis,
have it sitting
then
right here on my desk.
yes, then I would try to go the IEP route. And the
That's what I
reason for
was
that,
kind of informed by somebody else, but I'm glad that somebody that this was a another parent, but it was I wanted somebody that actually really, really knows what they're talking about, his opinion.
well, the reason that that is very important too is that an IEP is a legal document. An individualized educational plan is a legal document that can follow you all the way through school. I mean, there are wannabe lawyers taking a bar exam right now who are getting extra time on the bar because they've had an IEP since they were 5 or 6 years old. You
Yes.
know, there's all kinds of people who, when they're sitting down for some sort of advanced testing that they need in their career or their profession, they need to be able to prove that they've had documentation, you know, from jump, essentially. So
Hmm.
it is a legal document. It's a very important one. Giselle, what's your question?
Out of curiosity, are you, as an adult, are you able to get an IEP
That is a
after
really
getting a
interesting
diagnosis?
question. It is so not in the same sense as what you could get as a high school, if as a secondary school student. So if you're in elementary, middle, or high school, that's the time to have an IEP. That does not mean, however, that they're not academically. Sometimes what I see is I'll see people that are really, really, really smart. Like their IQ is above a 120. So
Hmm.
they meet the legal definition of having a high IQ. So they also have ADHD or autism, but you
Yeah.
don't know that or see that because their IQ is masking
So,
those
but
symptoms.
yes,
And so
yes.
sometimes those people will not exhibit the symptoms of ADHD until they are in college. And then it's like the only then is the work difficult enough that they need assistance. For those students, they need to go see disability and the dean of students at their school or at their college. There are still resources available for those adults. And usually I find colleges to be very agreeable and very willing to work with adults. You
Okay.
do still need a medical diagnosis. I mean, you can't just walk in somewhere and say, I have ADHD. You know, you do need to have a psychologist
Yeah.
evaluate you and determine that. But so as an adult, getting an IEP is much harder. But that is also why if you can get an IEP as a child, you really want to have that IEP as a child and you want it to follow you all the way through school
Giselle has an
because you
IEP.
who does?
Giselle does. I got her an
Okay.
IEP when she was in kindergarten because of I actually had her because she had speech therapy issues at a very young age. So I actually had her. I went and fought and fought and fought. But this was back in the early 2000s. Things
2000s.
aren't as
Yeah.
easily I cannot fight like I used to be able to fight. And that's what
Yeah.
I have noticed, and that's what I find, and I'm quite sure that a lot of parents feel the same way. Extremely frustrated because our hands feel tied all the time. We can't talk. We are having issues with communications with the teachers because the teachers are being so overran, especially in the school district that I'm dealing with. I'm not going to say the names of the school district, but in the school district that I'm dealing with, there's been such a population growth and there
Yes.
been such a huge teacher, and teachers are
Yeah.
doing multiple classes. They're
Yeah.
doing multiple testing. They're doing also bus driving. They're also doing other administrative work. You know, the teachers in my school district are just so overwhelmed with so much work. And then, I can understand that having communications problem is a problem. But where I have a big issue is that you want to go through apps, you want to go through this, you want to go through that. Well, what was so wrong with the just sending me straight up an email or calling me? I can't call and get to talk to teachers very often. It's very difficult. I can't talk to anybody in the administration office except for the very front office lady, which is amazing. She's wonderful, but the rest of that office is very iffy.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You know, and unfortunately, Sela, you just made the argument for school choice. And this is that controversial door that I talk about all the time, which is I understand on one hand, we have the argument that if we are not funding the public schools properly, we cannot take care of these problems. If we're not paying our teachers adequately, if we're not paying for the resources that we need to do all this stuff, we have exactly the problem that you just described. However, for many special needs parents, even if you threw every possible resource at a school, you still might have these types of issues. And
Hmm.
so this is where we see a lot of parents. So I am in North Carolina, and North Carolina now has an opportunity scholarship, and it is very, very controversial. The teachers union, our teachers aren't really allowed to unionize, but they still have a group. They are very, very opposed to the opportunity scholarship because, in their opinion, it bankrupts the public school. Um, all of my children have an opportunity scholarship, and they are all attending private school. And they are doing that because the private school that my children are at now, private school is not always the answer. For some
Hmm.
people, private schools do not have to honor IEPs and 504s. So for some schools, a private school is not helpful if they're not going to be able to legally follow it. But so one of my children was born at 27 weeks. He was extremely premature.
Yeah.
And he now has ADHD, which is likely a ramification of that extreme prematurity and the 90 days he was in a NICU after birth.
Yeah.
So, in his circumstance, his private school is great. And it's great because his class is capped at 20. And he has a
Which
full time teacher and a full time assistant teacher. So, it's
which
really a
is
one
so
adult,
needed for ADHD.
it's
So,
a
so
1
needed.
to 10 ratio. And also, there's a reading specialist in that school as well, who all she does is help these kids with their literacy. So,
Hmm.
some of the time, if you're not getting what you need from public school, being creative and looking at your other resources can be good. I am also very familiar with mothers who are like, homeschool or public school is not working. And honestly, we can do better in homeschool or in a homeschool co op. Now, for me
That's what I was
personally,
going to talk to you about is the co-ops because that's what I'm actually looking into. Because
right.
it's
For
just he needs that somebody that ratio, and when he's got both types of ADHD and it's severely impacted when we looked at what the teachers showed, I was like, oh, well, I'm managing it better at home because I already know what to do. I, you know,
yeah,
and when you've got 30, 40 kids that are all
right.
misbehaving or all doing something, and, you can't just focus in on one child.
No, he's not going to be able to do it. That's a recipe for failure.
And that's
So,
what I got all over them the other day. I was like, you're not only failing everything, you're failing my son and you're failing me as a parent.
yes. Yes. And I am sure you are correct about that. So I actually do like and see a lot of value in homeschooling, particularly in homeschool co oping. Do I think everyone should homeschool? No. Is homeschooling by some people used as a tool to hide child abuse? Yes. Um,
Oh.
Also, would I personally want to homeschool? Absolutely not. I would never, ever be a good educator. That's just not, I do not have a wealth of patience. So that I love my children's teachers because they are very, very patient and they are very good at this. I am not. And so
Hmm.
I think, those are all things you need to consider though. Like, do you have the temperament to make you a good teacher? But goodness gracious, like some of these homeschool co-ops are mothers who have education degrees who are homeschooling their own children and half the neighborhood. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely think there is a huge value in that if it's done in the right way. So, I guess kind of my bottom line for all of that is certainly you need to try to get everything you can get out of your public school because it's free and you are legally and constitutionally entitled to it. But if you feel like you're burned out and worn out and you can't do it anymore, then it's time to get creative. And if your state has resources like an opportunity scholarship that will help you pursue a private school where your kid can be more successful, great. If that's not going to work and your kid will thrive with homeschool and you can do it, or you can find someone else who
Find
can do
someone
it,
else to do it. Yeah.
also fantastic. One of the other things that I think merits a discussion is the role of an advocate. So
Yes.
people call me all the time and they're like, Paula, I need you to come to my IEP meeting because I need to sue this public school. And I'm like, ooh, okay. You don't want to go guns blazing into an IEP meeting with an attorney, because if you do that, what will happen is the school will say, we're not going to meet with you unless our attorney can be here. And then they're going to postpone your meeting, and then you're going to be waiting for 6 months for both attorneys to be able to get there, and then the school year's over. And you've waited all this time with
And
no
now
help.
your child has failed. And this is the situation I'm dealing with right now is all this time that's going by. Every single day I'm getting notifications, oh, another missing assignment. Every single day I'm getting,
Yep.
oh, well, he was too busy talking, or this and that.
Yes.
And that's what I was explaining, because I went to the certain person, and this certain person doesn't handle any of this. Come to find out, literally my next door neighbor does.
Yeah.
And all I did was say, hey, lead me to the right place. Tell me who to go to. Oh, I've got it handled. Oh, I've got it handled. And this was not, there was another situation that was a very bad situation where there's a website that was literally made by pedophiles for pedophiles, and it wasn't blocked by the school. And I went to this particular person and said, hey, I've done research on this website, look this up, da da da. And then I was told, oh, I've got it handled. Not when I said, can I go to IT? I was told no. Come to find out
Okay.
from somebody else, I could have gone to IT myself.
Well,
Like there.
let's take a pause and talk
Hey.
about pedophiles, because pedophiles are a completely different
Oh yeah.
topic
You're right. You're
than
right.
IEPs and 504s. All right.
Yeah, you're right.
And I want to just talk about how I would handle a situation if I thought or knew there was some pervert working at my kid's school.
Mm-hmm.
There are two actions that I would take. The first one is not to mess with the, I mean, I would tell the principal, I would send documentation to the principal so that you can show I have notified the principal. As soon as you know, you make sure that they know by you send that documentation. The next thing I would do, I would not sit there and wait on the school to do anything.
I
I
called
would
the sheriffs.
notify, but the next thing I would do is call 911. I would report that to the police so fast
I
that
did.
my head would spin. This is the thing that I also think parents need to understand, and this is a conversation I've seen locally as well. It can take law enforcement, or it seems like it takes forever. Like in our minds, we think there is a pervert in this school. Y'all need to get in there and do something today. And sometimes it doesn't happen today. And the reason it doesn't happen is because law enforcement is doing a tremendous amount of work on the back end. And some of the time people don't even understand law enforcement has been conducting surveillance on pedophiles for a year before they wind up arresting them, because they want to make sure it sticks.
Mm-hmm.
So law enforcement might not always feel like they're doing a lot, but I promise you they're probably doing a lot more than you think they are. You just have to tell them and trust the process. Now, the next thing I would do after I've told the police is, if I have a child who has suffered harm, so if there's a pedophile in the school and the pedophile has hurt my child, hurt another child, if there is actual harm, then that's where I would start looking at a civil attorney to file a lawsuit against the district. There is actually a huge national movement right now that was actually started by Paris Hilton. So, I know, right? So, Paris Hilton, the famous,
She suffered a lot of traumas herself.
Yeah, she did.
she has. And so,
Mm-hmm.
Paris didn't really come out with a lot of that until just recently. But she basically said, look, I wound up in this home for troubled kids and I got traumatized more there. And she's really done a great job of shedding a light on the fact that, we have these individuals who are meant to do harm. And there
Or
are
go
civil
in meaning
lawsuits
to do
that you,
harm.
yes, there are civil lawsuits that you can file. So, like,
I had no idea
if
about
your
that.
child is in a school and there's a pervert in it and your child was never harmed, okay, then you don't have a cause of action.
Yeah.
But if your child was harmed, then yes, sue. Absolutely sue, especially if the school failed to do a background check or if the school knew because you told the school, look at this thing I found. That's why I said I would tell the principal because that's you establishing notification.
Oh yeah,
You
I
know,
did.
yeah,
Uh,
you want to make sure you've established notification, but you can absolutely file a lawsuit if your
yeah.
child has
Well, it
actually been
wasn't.
harmed.
So the situation that happened with my child happened more at home using the Chromebook, the school Chromebook. And then so I wasn't going after the school because it was my child at home. After we went to bed, he went on to this website, but this website is accessible and it shows up. We did an episode on it, and it shows up as a science school educational based program and the games. But if you keep scrolling, it's like hundreds of games. You keep scrolling, even past the credits of the website, it literally says
Mm-hmm.
join chat. And then you go into that chat and you can see everybody's chat. And then from that point, my son got lured into a private Zoom. That's how that all ended up happening. And then when the school called me about it and said, hey, this is because there were certain words that were flagged because he was using the Chromebook. But yeah, that's how that happened.
So that is also an excellent conversation on not only the school system and their duty of care, but the internet period.
Oh yeah,
So
we talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
there is there is actually a fantastic resource, and I will send you guys the website for this for these folks when we conclude our podcast, and you can put it in our comments. But
Yes.
there is a fantastic resource called the Lantern Project. And the Lantern Project is really a human trafficking prevention organization, but the woman who runs it is married to an IT guy. And
Mm.
he has really worked hard to create resources for families. Like, I've listened to every word Simon has had to say. And so, like, we have Bark on our stuff. And
Hmm.
Bark is this software you can use that
Yeah.
kind of helps cut stuff like that off. Because the unfortunate reality of a lot of this stuff is that moms and dads are just not aware of how dangerous it is. No mom and dad thought my kid is going to be talking to a pervert if I let them play Roblox. Like,
Yeah.
nobody ever sits
Right?
around and thinks that. And now Roblox is getting sued because
Mm-hmm.
their kids were, perverts were talking to them. Barbie chat. No one ever thought if my kid's in Barbie chat, she's talking to other 8-year-olds. No one ever thought that was going to get as dangerous as what it is. And the problem with all this stuff is the second you get one part of it fixed, 20 more of
There's
them
another one.
20, yeah,
exactly.
they come out with a whole bunch of them. We're not dealing with idiots. you
Right.
know, they're not
Right. And I
dumb.
mean, it's exactly like Backpage. Backpage used to be like a human trafficking website, and the government shut it down. But then 5 minutes later, 20 more websites just like it opened up. So the unfortunate reality is we as parents have to be really proactive. Like, I tell my kids, so my oldest is 12. None of my children have a cell phone.
Hmm.
They're going to get one when they're 15
Hmm.
because if they can drive a car, that's a little bit different when they're in that permit phase. But there's nowhere that they go that they can't call me or that some adult can't call me.
Yeah.
And so I don't want them on phones because I don't want them looking at porn and I don't want other kids showing them porn. So we don't have phones. We do have iPads, but the iPads have like nanny cams and Bark on them and all kinds of stuff.
All kinds of
And then
the protective software to let you know if they're doing. Yeah.
we also have
I will say
rules.
that I love that. I
Yeah.
love that because I grew up from about 13 years old when I first got my phone. A little bit before that, I had friends that introduced me to the internet, a cousin that introduced me to the internet world, and then I fell into a world of talking to strangers, and a lot of them were full grown men. And,
Yeah.
and that was a world that I stayed in for years. Even when
Well,
she went to break my phone and everything, I still continued. I found my ways to get on the internet.
well, and the thing of it is too, a lot of us just don't understand because most parents don't think, and if I didn't do what I do work wise, I wouldn't think about it either. But I sat my children down when I started allowing them to have iPad access, and I said, "Look, you're allowed to play games with each other. But
Mm-hmm.
if I find out you're talking to creepers on the internet, if you're talking, you're not allowed to talk to someone. Like, if your friend Thomas from school sends you a text message, that's okay because I know Thomas's mother. And if Thomas starts sending you something you shouldn't, I'm going to call Thomas's mother. Thomas is a real person. We know who he is. That's
Mm-hmm.
fine. I'm not trying to say
Exactly.
you can't have friends, but I want to make sure that the friends are people who we know who they are
Yes.
because
We
you
can
don't know what.
identify who they are, who their parents are, where they're from, the whole nine yards.
Right. Right.
Yes.
And I've told my children that from the beginning. If I catch you talking to a creeper on the internet, you will not have the internet at
Mm-hmm.
all. The other thing that I don't allow in my home is I don't let my kids be on the internet in their bedrooms at all.
I don't blame
That's
Not
a
you.
at
good
all.
one.
I don't blame you.
You have to be in a public part of the home where
Mm-hmm.
like daddy and I can walk by at any time and see what's happening on there. So that because I don't want them to just think, oh, well, I'll just go up to my room and talk to some creeper. Mom's not going to know. I also tell them we will look at your text messages. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not me trying to be mean or to invade your privacy. It's because I don't want quite frankly, I didn't say this to them that bluntly. I don't want my children receiving or sending child porn. I just
Yeah.
don't. Like,
And it's
um,
an epidemic.
it,
It is like insanity, especially when I started doing the research on it. Like there are so many websites that are getting past the IT techs at these schools on and kids, and that's how my son found out about this website was at school. You know,
yes. And they've got to be more vigilant about this stuff. That's why the Lantern Project's IT work is so important, and I really think it's so incredibly valuable.
that is. I'm sorry to get off on the tangent on the pedo part, but
No, you're okay. I will circle back though,
yeah, let's
because
circle back.
one of the things I was also going to say about IEPs and 504s when I was talking about how you don't always need a lawyer, one of the things that you do need is an advocate. And so there are a lot of mental health organizations that have advocates who work for them who will
Hmm.
go to IEP meetings. And so, Sela, I know you were saying before, like, I fought and I fought and I fought and I'm tired of fighting and I can't do it anymore. I understand that. Like, to be perfectly honest with you, that's a reason that my kids go to private school. Like, I know very few parents who, if they can opt out of fighting, won't. If you have the means and the resources to opt out of fighting, you will opt out of fighting because it's exhausting.
It
And
is
because, quite
exhausting, but I'm
frankly,
also the type of person to go, no, I'm not going to let everybody else deal with this crap either. I am that type of
right.
person.
Right. But if you are ever like, I cannot do this anymore and it has to be done,
Hmm.
then looking for a non lawyer advocate is very, very helpful. And there are a lot of nonprofits that do this around the country. Some of the nonprofits are retired teachers who are
Hmm.
wonderful. Some of them are parents who have been special needs advocates for years and years and years, and they're tired. And so, or well, they're not tired. They have this skill set. And
Uh-huh.
like, Sela, they would be like you if all your kids were grown and you didn't have to do this anymore. You'd be like, what am I going to do with my life? I'm going to become an advocate and help other parents because I know what to say and what to do.
Yeah.
She's on the
I
Well,
last
I am on
one.
my last one. So he is my last one.
I will also add some of these advocates are just as educated, if not better, educated than lawyers. Like, I've got a law degree, but at no point in my JD studies was I taught about education law. I don't even
Hmm.
think education law was a class that I had available to me in law school. That is a very
That's
niche
crazy to think
boutique.
that should be literally one of the biggest things in law.
You would think, I would suspect, so I graduated from law school in 2005, and I would suspect due to like the awareness of autism now and the increasing in statistics nationwide,
Yeah.
I would think that there are probably more classes on education law, but finding an education lawyer can actually be very challenging because most education boutique firms represent school systems.
Yes,
And
and
so
not the parents.
yes. So finding a boutique education law firm that represents parents can be very difficult. Like I have one in North Carolina that I almost always exclusively recommend to parents because they do really great work. But I mean, it can be difficult to even find a legal representative. So I
Hmm.
say all that to say, like, I think at the end of the day, the heart of like the school choice argument is really rooted in what is going to be best for this kid. And
Yes.
I don't think I think that most of the time mom knows what's best for the kid because mom sees the kid all the time and mom's with the kid all the time. And most of the time, what mom sees and thinks is going to be best probably is. I'm not saying always. There are parents who are in denial. There are parents that are ill equipped to parent because of substance use or whatever else. But most of the time, your average functioning mother is able to identify what her child needs and what her child doesn't. And so if you feel like I've done everything I can do, it's not working, look at your alternatives. I mean, there are alternatives, and some of them might not be ideal, but we don't want our kids to hate school. School should be fun, learning should be fun.
Learning should be fun. Exactly. Learning should be fun because it's something that we should want to do for the rest of our lives. We don't want to stay
Right.
in this place of lack of knowledge. We need more knowledge.
That's
Like,
right.
yeah.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Yeah. And I have to say that my son, I have a senior right now, and then I have an eighth grader right now, and they couldn't be more different. You know what I mean? They're so
Yeah.
two different on the spectrum on type of people. It's unreal. But even my senior, who is extremely responsible, straight A student, like she's just got her stuff all together, never has any problems, is always done with her work early in school, always, just as bit had all that. But she also I did put her through, because in first grade she got held back, so I put her in through the summer my brain's not working. I
It's like a school program, but it's a business that does like a school
Yeah,
program and it
tutoring,
teaches kids.
tutoring.
It's a tutoring.
That's the word I was looking for, tutoring. But and that I think that really made a big difference. Where later on in life, she had these things, and I'm thinking about doing it for my son too, to maybe help him develop some skills, some organizational skills for the schoolwork and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I'm definitely looking at different options because, like I said, this is my last one. I've had to fight through every single kid, and I'm like at this point, I'm like I'm just like I'm over it, you guys. I'm really over it. you know?
Right. Well,
And,
and the sad thing about that, I understand that because I felt that way myself as well. And the
hmm
sad thing about it is that no one should feel that way. Like at the end of the day, we are supposed to be doing what is in the best interest of another human being, whether it's your child or somebody else's child or any child, it doesn't matter. It's still a kid.
It's still a
And we
kid.
are
Yeah.
supposed to be doing what is in their best interests. And when you can't get it together to do that, I mean, that's a problem. So, you know, I hate that for parents. And I hear this story over and over again. Like, I do not think that you are unique. I do not think that
No,
I am unique. I think that this is an ongoing nationwide problem.
I completely agree, and I'm so glad that you got an opportunity to address it. And um, you have a book called Tumbleweeds. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so my book talks about my four children. Each of my children are very different. One of them was born with a complete cleft palate. One of them was my acute preeclampsia baby who was in a NICU for 90 days. One of
Yeah.
them I didn't think I could have at all, and he is the most healthy pregnancy child I had. Third time was the charm. And then my fourth child is legally adopted. And so I kind of walk people through, it's an anecdotal story about what happened in my life, but I walk people through everything I've faced, which included a lot of IEP meetings and litigation. And what have I learned?
Mm-hmm.
And I try to provide practical tips for parents. So my book's available on Amazon, but it's also on my website, paulayost.com. And my website actually has some free resources for parents as well that they can download that'll kind of help hopefully give them some guides for some of the things that we've talked about today as well.
Well, we'll most definitely put that in our footnotes and everything to make sure that people have access to all of that. Paula, you have given me so much information that from this today, and I appreciate you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Sela. It was great to be with you guys.
I do want to say that coming from somebody who grew up in public school that has completely failed them in so many different ways, um, thank you for being an advocate for that, for those kids, because I had the hardest time, and then my mom would advocate for me and tell them she does have a learning disability. She does have, these issues. And they would go, oh, I think she's just
She's
faking it.
faking it.
Or I
They
always
literally
had
looked at
teachers
me,
that
and
were against me.
yeah, I had multiple teachers because I said, I'm done with all this because I was getting phone calls and letters and this and that every single day from these certain teachers. And so I said, okay, I'm done. And I sat them all down, which is something that I'm having a hard time to get done today. you know, but back in the earlier 2000s, it was much easier to do. The school systems weren't
Yeah.
so stuck on automated uh, communications. That's, I think, the huge problem is that schools are stuck on automated communications nowadays instead of one-on-one communications. That's just my own personal opinion. But yeah, no, they sat down and looked at me. I said, hey, you guys, look, look at this, look at this, look at this. I said, does have an IEP. She does have a learning disability. And I literally had 3 out of the 6 teachers looked at me and said, I think she's faking it. There was one teacher that looked and sat back and thought about it and went, no, no, I can see it. It's hidden. He goes, I think it's very, very well hidden, but I can see it. And it
That is
was
a tremendous, yeah, that's a tremendous amount of gaslighting.
right.
I would just say if you're a parent today who's having an experience like that, at the end of the day, what I would also say is a situation like that is maddening because the school system is not, they've made up their mind at that point that they don't want to help you. That's the
Hmm.
unfortunate reality is they've made up their mind that they don't want to help you. That doesn't change the fact that your child has an issue. And so usually I would look at seeing, and I hate saying this because for a lot of people it's expensive and it's more than families can afford.
Yeah.
But in an ideal world, what you need to do if you're like, I think there's something wrong, one, talk to the pediatrician, see if the pediatrician agrees with you. Some of the time, the pediatrician can become your best ally because they're going to see exactly what you see. Some of the
Hmm.
time, they can also recommend you to a developmental pediatrician, which is very helpful. And other times, they can recommend you to go see a psychologist. So, a really good psychological educational evaluation takes about 6 hours, but sometimes that's what people need. You know, if your IQ is a 136, but you have ADHD, you do have ADHD. Your IQ is just masking it. And you
Yeah.
need to know that because that's the only way you can really get help. And as much as the school systems say that they conduct that testing, some of the time I think their testing is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like their testing gives you the result they want you to have. So if you
Yes.
don't trust them, And I don't blame anyone at this point who doesn't trust them. Because they have an agenda, and their
They
agenda is not what
absolutely
your
do
agenda.
have an agenda. They
And they're
absolutely do.
and
And I'm noticing that so much more. I've been with the same school district for 10 years now, and I have watched it. And I watched it, and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm seeing this change quite a bit. And I'm not
Yeah.
liking, and I haven't been liking the direction that
so
it's going.
if that's you, go to that pediatrician first, because that's
I
going to be
did.
something your insurance is going to pay for.
I already did
Um,
that. Yep.
and but then again, like developmental pediatrician, and worst case scenario, like if literally no one is listening to you, like thank God I live outside Charlotte, and so there are several psychologists here that I'll just recommend families to. I'm like, do you have $1,600? And some of them are like, no. But for the ones that are like, yeah, I could pull that out of an account, I'm like, go see the developmental
That is
psychologist. Like,
very, very, very unfortunate for the people that just don't have that because, like, to some people, $1,600 is the same as $1,000,000. You know,
exactly,
you say
exactly, and
$1,600 in their head. That's just that's the equivalency of coming up with $1,000,000 for,
it
you know.
is,
I've
Yeah.
it
been there.
is. It is. And and the sad thing about that too is your wealthy families will be able to come up with it. Your lower income families will have Medicaid that will take care of it. But
But the
it's your
middle
working
ones
poor. It's
that are
your working poor. Those are
yeah.
the ones that are going to struggle.
Yeah, and that's the most unfortunate part that it's literally an entire class of people that are being failed by the system.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate all of your help, Paula. We will make sure that we put down if people need your all of your information, your book, and all of that. You have been such an amazing help for me today. I can tell you that. And I
Good.
know
Thanks,
you have for
ladies.
our listeners.
Thank
I
you. It was
definitely
great
would
to
love for
hear.
you to come back and we talk more about the preeclampsia
Okay.
because I definitely know that I got very, very lucky in my situation. And I
I
very
did.
much I had my mindset on how things were going to go. And I did, look into it a little bit. But that's because I had that pre warning when I got pregnant. And
Yeah.
I would love for us to touch base on that on a different episode. I think that three women who've had it and different levels of it would definitely be great
Yeah.
for other women out there who need to know about it.
I would love to do
Absolutely.
that.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you, Paula. For all of
Yeah.
you that would like to reach us, and if you have a story that you would like to share, stay anonymous. We absolutely respect that, but your story can and will help others. You can reach us at 12 in through THRU 34theglass@gmail.com. You can also reach us on our Facebook and our TikTok. We appreciate you for listening to us, and hopefully this episode has helped you. Thanks again for looking in through the glass.
Thanks, ladies.